إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So yesterday then we started with the first lesson on the three principles, and we gave a small introduction regarding this particular book, the three fundamental principles. We said that the author, the scholar who wrote this book, his name was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala, and he was one of the great scholars. We said yesterday that the scholars, they are people who learnt the religion in detail. They learnt all about the Quran, all about the Sunnah and the Hadith, and so they have a great amount of knowledge about the religion of Islam. They are the scholars. And Allah told us to ask the scholars about our religion when we don't know. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge, the people of remembrance, if you do not know. So Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala was one of those great scholars. And this book, The Three Fundamental Principles, is one of his famous books that he wrote about Islam. And specifically, this book is about the three questions that we are all going to be asked in the grave. When a person dies, then the two angels, they come to that person after he dies, and they will ask him three questions. The first one is, Man Rabbuka? Who is your Lord? Who is your Creator? Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And the second question, Ma dinuk? What is your religion? Your religion of Islam. What is your religion? What are the pillars of your religion? What are the different rulings in your religion? How do you do the worship in your religion? And the third question, Man Nabiyyuka? Who is your prophet? So every Muslim needs to know who the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is, to know what his name was, to know something about his biography, about his family, when he lived, what he did, how he taught Islam to the people. Every Muslim needs to know who the final messenger, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is to. So today then we're going to start from the beginning of the book, the three fundamental principles. So as we said, this is a book written by one of the scholars to explain to us the answers to those three questions. This book will give you the answers about who is your Lord, what is your religion, and who is your prophet. This book, if you read it carefully and you learn it carefully, then you will understand what the answers are for those three questions. And like we said yesterday, Hopefully, you can all get a copy of the book. You can ask your parents to try and get a copy of the book. I'm not sure which ones are available in English, but if the explanation of Shaykh al-Fawzan is available in English, then that is probably the easiest one to follow. The explanations of Shaykh al-Fawzan, another one of the scholars, they are the easiest ones to follow. So if that has been translated and is available, then that's a good one. And if you have any other copy, like the explanation of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen or Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabiri, rahimahumullah, any of those will be okay. And if you don't have any, then perhaps you can use a PDF or some type of online copy so that you know what we are reading and where we are going in each class. So at the beginning of the book, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah ta'ala starts with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is something very common, to begin with Bismillah at the beginning of a book. And it is something that the scholars regularly do to begin their books, to begin their works, their writings, their khutbahs, their lectures, whatever it might be, to begin with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Because the meaning of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the meaning of it is, or the intention behind it is, that you are seeking help and assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever it is that you are about to do. So if a scholar is about to write a book, then at the beginning, before he starts, he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help him in writing that book, to make it easy for him to write that book, to get assistance from Allah. And that's what Bismillah means. In the name of Allah. Bismillah. In the name of Allah. You say that at the beginning when you're about to do something, because you are asking Allah to help you to do that thing. So the scholars, when they say Bismillah at the beginning of the book, it's like they are asking Allah to help them to write this book in a good way, in a proper way, in a way that will benefit everybody who reads it. So the Basmalah, when you say Bismillah, then really you are saying, in the name of Allah, I ask Allah for aid and assistance, for help in whatever it is you're about to do. That's why when a scholar, for example, gives a lecture, at the beginning of the lecture he might say Bismillah before starting the lecture, because by saying Bismillah, you are asking Allah for aid and for help in what you are about to do. And so that's why the scholars, they mention Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim at the beginning of their books. And in fact, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he used to write letters and send them to different people to tell them to become Muslim, He would write letters and send them to the kings of other countries and the leaders of other places. He would write letters to them and tell them that they should accept Islam and become Muslim. Those letters, he would start them with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or with the Basmala, with Bismillah at the beginning. And there are other examples mentioned about the prophets starting with Bismillah at the beginning. So this is a good practice, that Islamically you start in the name of Allah, meaning that you are seeking help from Allah in what you are going to do. So that's what he does here. He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, who is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Those are two of the names of Allah. Allah has many different names. It's not just Allah. There are lots of other names that Allah has too. And we don't actually know exactly how many names Allah has. But Allah has many names. And lots of them are mentioned in the Quran and in the Hadith, the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these are two of those names. Ar-Rahman is one of the names of Allah. Ar-Rahim is one of the names of Allah. So when you see people, their names are, for example, Abdul Rahman and Abdul Rahim and Abdul Ghafur and Abdul Sami' and Abdul Kareem. Whenever you see people with the name Abd and then another part, the Abd means the servant of. And then the second part of the name is one of the names of Allah. So Abdul Rahman is the servant of Ar-Rahman, who is Allah, of course. Abdul Rahim, the servant of Ar-Rahim, who is Allah, of course. Abdul Ghafur, the servant of Al-Ghafur, who is Allah, of course. So Allah has many different names. And these are two of them, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, which have the meaning of mercy. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful to all of the people, even the kuffar. Allah has mercy even on the non-Muslims. But of course, Allah has more mercy on the Muslims. Allah has more mercy on the Muslims and on the Day of Judgment for the Muslims. But even the non-Muslims in this world, they have mercy from Allah. They eat and they drink and they have clothes and they have homes. All of that is from the mercy of Allah to them. But the Muslims have a greater mercy from Allah. So these are two of the names of Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. And we don't actually know exactly how many names Allah has. Some people, they make a mistake and they think that Allah only has exactly 99 names. And that is a mistake. Allah has more than 99 names. But some people, because they misunderstand a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that mentions about Allah having 99 names, Inna lillahi tis'atan wa tis'een asma, man ahsaha dakhala al-jannah. It says in a hadith that Allah has 99 names. Whoever learns them and memorizes them and acts upon them will enter paradise. But that hadith doesn't actually mean that Allah only has 99 names. Allah has more than that, and we don't know how many. But the hadith simply means as long as you memorize at least 99 of them and learn them and practice them and understand them, then you'll enter paradise. So it's important to remember, Allah has more than 99 names. It's a mistake that some people accidentally think that Allah only has 99 names. Allah has more than that. And in fact, some of the scholars that we were talking about, some of the scholars already found more than 99 names in the Quran, and they already found more than 99 names in the Sunnah. Some of the scholars even found 130, and some of them 120, and some of them 110. So already there are more names found within the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then in the book, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab says, "I'lam rahimakallah, know and have knowledge, may Allah have mercy upon you." Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, the scholar who wrote the book, is making dua for you, making dua for all of the people who are reading this book, because he really wanted everyone to understand the religion properly. He sincerely wanted everyone, all the Muslims, to understand what he is saying properly. And so he makes dua for you right at the start, saying, may Allah have mercy on you. أنه يجب علينا تعلم أربع مسائل. He says it is obligatory upon us to learn 4 important things. This is an introduction. The book is about the 3 principles. We're going to get to those later on. Right now, there's an introduction to the book first. He says in the introduction, there are 4 important things to remember. That doesn't mean that these are the only 4 important things to remember in Islam. There are many other things too. But these are 4 from the most important things to remember. What are they? Firstly, al-ula al-ilm. The first important thing to remember is knowledge. Yesterday we mentioned that Allah created us in order to worship Him. That is the reason why we have been created and put on this earth. And to worship Allah, we must have knowledge. Knowledge means you know how to worship Allah properly. You know how to pray properly, how to make wudu properly. You need to have knowledge about all of those things. So he says that's the first important thing to remember. As Muslims, we must have knowledge. What must we have knowledge about? The first and most important point is ma'rifatullah, that we must have knowledge of Allah. And remember, we said that is the first principle that we're going to discuss later. We must have knowledge of Allah, who our creator is, who Allah is, who created all of the heavens and the earth, created everything that we see. Who is Allah? We have to know that. And that's what we're going to be learning in the future weeks in the lessons, inshallah. And also, معرفة نبيه, to have knowledge of who the Prophet of Allah is. And that we mentioned is another one of the important principles, to know who our messenger is. And معرفة دين الإسلام بالأدلة, and to have knowledge of this religion of Islam with the evidences. Those are the three principles that we're going to be studying bit by bit in the lessons that we're going to do in the future. To have knowledge of Allah, to have knowledge of the religion of Islam, what it is and how you are supposed to be a Muslim, and to have knowledge of who the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is, the final messenger who was sent to us, and there are no more messengers after him. He was the last one, and this is the final revelation, the religion that everybody has to now follow. That's the first important thing, that as Muslims we must have knowledge. We have to understand about those things. The second is al-amalu bihi. The second important thing is that we must act upon it. Because a Muslim doesn't just understand something but then not do it. When you understand something, when you learn something, you have to then go do it. So when you learn how to pray, you have to then go and pray. When you learn how to make wudu properly, then you have to make sure when you go and do wudu, you do it properly the way you learned it. When you learn about how to fast, and when you fast, then you fast properly how you learned it. So you learned you're not allowed to eat, and you're not allowed to drink, and you're not allowed to swear or do any bad things. You learn all of those things so that when you fast, you can do it properly. That's the point of learning. We learn all of the things about Islam so that we can then do them properly. And that makes us good Muslims. When you learn about how to make wudu, then you can do it properly. When you learn about how to pray and you learn what to say, then you can go and say it and do it properly. So the second important thing is about doing what you learn. Because if a person learns everything but then doesn't go and do it, then that is a failure. That is a fail, like you fail your test. Because Islam is not just about learning what it is to learn it and then go and do it. Because imagine if somebody learned everything you're supposed to say in the prayer and learned how you're supposed to pray properly, learned it all, but then doesn't bother to pray. Would that be correct? That would not be correct, and that would not be right. The Muslim isn't just supposed to learn how to do it and then not do it. You're supposed to learn how to do it so that you can go and do it then and worship Allah. So the second important thing is acting and doing what we learn from the evidences and the knowledge in the Quran, in the Hadith. The third important thing here is ad-da'watu ilayhi. That once we have learnt the knowledge and we are doing it, then we have to try, if we are able, to teach other people too. Because once you've learnt it, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for you to learn, then you started practicing it and doing it as well. Then if you can, you should try and teach other people too. Try and teach your friends and your neighbors and other people. Try to teach them the Islamic knowledge that you have learned. And that is something that a Muslim should do if you are able to do it once you have learned it yourself. So the third point is ad-da'watu ilayhi, calling people to Islam, calling them to the religion so that they can be saved in the afterlife, because the believers and the people of Tawheed who worship Allah alone with knowledge, they are the ones who will be saved from the hellfire and enter paradise. So you have to try, when you are capable, to help your friends and your family and other people and try to tell them about this religion too. And the fourth thing, as-sabru ala al-adha fihi, that you must be patient upon this religion, upon this knowledge, upon everything you're learning and practicing. It needs patience. And there are three types of patience you have to do. One is being patient in doing the worship, because sometimes it can be difficult. Getting up for the Fajr prayer early in the morning could be difficult. So you have to be patient and make sure you do it. Praying the Isha prayer late at night could be difficult, but you have to be patient and make sure you pray it. When you're fasting and you get hungry, you start to get hungry, but you have to be patient and do that worship. So doing worship needs patience. That's one type, to be patient in doing worship. The second type is to be patient in staying away from the haram things. Because people, they sometimes want to do the haram things. Shaitan tries to convince you to go and do something haram. So you have to be patient and stop yourself from doing that haram thing. Maybe the shaitan is trying to convince you and tell you to steal something because you haven't got it. So he's trying to tell you, steal it and take it. But you have to be patient and know that it's haram and you can't do that. So the second type of patience is being patient in staying away from the haram things. The third type of patience is being patient in life, the decree of Allah. Because sometimes there will be things that happen to you that are good and you're happy, but sometimes things will happen that make you sad. But when those things happen that make you sad, you have to remember to be patient at those times, because everything that is happening, whether it's the good things or the bad things, all of it is by the command of Allah. All of it is by the decree of Allah. The decree, we'll talk about that later. That is the command of Allah, that everything which happens in this world, it is by the command of Allah. So even if something happens that makes you sad, you have to remember to be patient. So those are the three types of patience. Patience in doing worship, patience in staying away from the haram, and patience on the decree and the different things that happen in life. If something happens that makes you sad, you remember to stay patient and make dua to Allah that He makes it easy for you and removes and takes away that thing which is making you sad. So those are the three levels of patience. Also, there is an ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ. Say that this is my path and I call to Allah upon knowledge. Everything we were speaking about just now, about knowledge and calling other people to Islam, then all of that must be done in accordance to the knowledge and the Quran and the Sunnah. You do not just make things up. So Allah told us, قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي. This is my path and I call to Allah upon knowledge. And the minimum amount of knowledge that every Muslim needs to have, The minimum amount is the amount of knowledge that you need to be able to worship Allah. All of the different worship that you do, you need to have the knowledge of how to do that worship. Because if you don't, then how are you going to do it properly? So prayer, for example, you need to have the knowledge of how to make wudu. How are you going to make wudu otherwise and pray? You need to have the knowledge of how to pray. How are you going to pray otherwise? You need to have the knowledge of Tawheed at the head of all of those things. Because Tawheed means worshipping Allah alone. So that is the minimum types of knowledge. The type of knowledge that you need to be able to worship Allah properly. Fasting was another example we gave. If you don't know what the rulings are, then you might go end up doing something that breaks your fast and you don't even know. Or if you go to do Hajj, when Muslims go every year to do Hajj, if you don't know how to do Hajj properly, you could go there and do it wrong. So it is important everybody has the minimum amount of knowledge, at least enough to be able to do all of your worships properly. So that is today's lesson, and hopefully I think most of the questions on the worksheet were answered in the session. And there was a homework from yesterday regarding the ayah وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Where was this ayah? Hopefully most of you found it, and inshallah ta'ala we will post up the answer on the Salafi Da'wah Lanks Twitter account straight after the lesson now, inshallah. So everybody will be able to see that answer, and you'll be able to check if it was the right chapter and the right ayah number that you found for that ayah. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. So that's where we're going to finish today. Revise carefully these two classes. Look at them again. Watch the video again. It should now be on the Salafi Da'wah account and perhaps on the Liverpool account too. Markaz Bukhari. Check these accounts. You should find them there. Look at the videos again. Watch them again carefully and revise them carefully. Look at the answers to the questions carefully. If you do this properly every week, then even if you're only 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, then by the end when we finish, inshallah ta'ala, you will know all about this book, what it's about, what the topic is, what the answers are to those questions, inshallah. So the next class will be on Monday then. This is every Monday and every Tuesday. So the next class will be on Monday now at the same time, 7 p.m. British time, GMT, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll stop on that for today then. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.